All right, so if you were able to follow those instructions I emailed earlier to log into Pilot, this is what you will see on your homepage. On the homepage, you've got the My Courses widget. Usually for most faculty above this, you'll also see a section for evaluations. I won't really talk about evaluations today, but we probably will offer either some tutorials or workshops later in the semester on those. To find your courses, you will see the My Courses widget, and it's usually split up by all different semesters. So because this is an account that I just made, I don't have previous things listed in here. I don't have any other semesters other than developing, but on yours you'll see maybe fall 2021, developing, iContinuous. And so to locate your courses, you'll go in here and you can just click on this little rectangular icon. Another way to locate courses is this icon up here. This will list all the courses that you have. I have just the workshop pinned, but like I said, you guys will have more depending on how many classes you're teaching. So something else I wanted to talk about on the homepage that's really helpful is this Pilot Help for Instructors. So there are two different places you can locate some of the tutorials that we've put together for our faculty, and here's one of them. So if you were to click on Pilot Help for Instructors, it would take you to our page that houses a lot of tutorials, some videos, and you could also use our website to look for different recorded workshops. So I know that this is actually going to be in the works, and some of it might be changing, but for now you should be able to use this link to get to those tutorials. So I'm going to go ahead and go on into the Pilot Basics workshop. And so I would ask that if you have your Pilot workshop, or your page pulled up, you can follow along with me and you can do some of these activities as we run through them. Because I have you all in here as co-faculty, you're going to be able to go in and create different news items. You can create modules in here, and you can do it in a safe environment where nothing will break, which is always nice, right? So on this homepage, this is the navigation bar I was talking to you about with all of the different tabs, and this is our regular navigation bar that we have in most of our Pilot course shells. Let's see. So throughout the navigation bar, what I'm going to do in this workshop is go through each individual one and kind of show you the different components in. On this main page, something that's really neat about this news item, it's a way that you can post things for your students if you want them to have an announcement right when they get into your Pilot page. So I see a lot of faculty members use this as a reminder for different things that are coming up, or also to introduce yourselves. This is a good spot for the very first news item to be something along the lines of, hey, I'm Cortney Ley. It's nice to meet you. I look forward to the semester with you. So to create a news item, you just click on this little blue link, and you can come in here and give it a title. So I can say, hello, everyone. This editor right here has a lot of different capabilities. So it's kind of like a Word document. It has different ways that you can bold the text. You can change the font size. I'm going to say, hi, I'm Cortney. Nice to meet you. And I'm going to bold my name so nobody forgets it. Boom. And so once you've typed in your announcement or whatever you want to share with the class, you can go down here and look at all different availabilities. This can give you a start date, and when you put a start date in, that means that this news item will not post until the date and time that you set it for. So that's what makes this really cool, is you can actually create several news items and you can put the start dates in here and stagger when they're going to go out throughout the semester, if you know that you want to give things to the students or give information to the students ahead of time. The end date, because if you have 2 news items a week for 14 weeks, that front page can get pretty cluttered. So the end date would be the very last day that news item is visible to the students. Okay, so the start date is when it posts. If you want to put an end date, you can. That's when it's going to disappear from that front page. All right, and after you put everything in, you can hit publish. Go back to the home. And there it is. So in this news tool, anytime you want to make, you can make changes. If you want to go in and edit, you can hit edit and it'll go in and change it. See? Oh, awesome. Thanks. All right. Perfect. And that's exactly what I want you to do too. If you are like, I want to practice this, this is something I want to use, please feel free to follow along with me and post stuff in here. That's what it's for. All right, something else I wanted to point out that's pretty useful for the students over here is this calendar widget. So whenever we go through and you start putting in your content, when you put dates on your content, dates on your quizzes, on different assessments or communication tools, there's a function that allows you to display it in the calendar. And I'll show you that when we're going through. So if you choose to display it in the calendar, when a student comes into your homepage, they can see all of their assignments over here. So that's kind of a neat little function on this home page. Before we move on, I did want to say the other place you can find our help tutorials is this help button right here. So there was the Pilot help for instructors on the very front home page of Pilot, and then on the course page, we also have a link here for you to go in and look if you ever have any questions and you want to kind of explore what we've got on it. That's a good place to go. So for home page overviews, do I have any questions yet? All right, awesome. So then we'll go ahead and move on to content. So the content is pretty much the meat and potatoes of your pilot page. This is where you're going to create your modules. You can upload your syllabus, put any resources that you want the students to have access to in here. So what I've seen a lot of faculty do, and this is completely up to preference, we'll leave those as they are, but what I've seen with faculty setting up their pilot pages, a lot of the time they'll use this add module function and they'll do it by week. So if I were to click on add module and I put week 1, you'll see on a lot of faculty pages splitting it up week by week for the whole semester, because that just makes it really easy to navigate for the students. If you don't have resources that you want to share with your students on a weekly basis, that's totally fine. You can organize it just by the types of resources. I've seen that too, where you might have, okay, here are all the videos that we're going to watch for the semester, or here are all of the handouts on this particular subject. So really that is up to preference and each individual faculty. What I would like you guys to do on the pilot page is go ahead and add a module, and I want you to name your module whatever your name is. So for me, I'll do a Cortney Ley module. Perfect. All right, so once you have those created, I want you to go into your module and I'll show you all of the different ways to add content. So this new button is where you can upload files. You can upload video, audio. I've seen a lot of links created this way if you want students to access a different website. So we can kind of go through and upload files. And if you would like to, if you have any on your computer that you would be comfortable adding, feel free to put it in your module with your name. So it could be maybe a syllabus, something you've been working on. So I'm going to say new. Upload file, hit my computer, and then when you click this upload button, it's going to take you to where all of your files are stored on the computer. I have one right here on my desktop that actually Chris Roberts, I'm not sure if he's in here, but he created and sent to me a while back. And so I'm going to upload it. I see that it's already there, and then I just click add. So what's neat about adding these files in Pilot is the students can download them, but they can also just see them in Pilot. If it loads. There we go. So they can always read it in here, or there's a download button, and this is visible to the students, so they're able to download documents if they need to. Something cool with this too, when you do upload a document, what I see a lot is once you've been using Pilot for a while, you might just copy all of your stuff into your course page each semester. Instead of having to rebuild and restart from scratch every semester, we do have a way to just copy everything over. And so sometimes faculty will copy things over, but they might need to change the name of something. And you can do that just by clicking here, and I could change the name of the document if I wanted to. I wanted to say respondus help. I could do that. All right, so I'm going to go back into my Cortney Ley module and show you, we'll do create a link. That's another very common one. And so this is as easy as putting in the title and copying that URL. So if I want to copy the URL, I would just click this and copy. Go back over here and paste. And I could say CATS resource. This right here, open as external resource, that just means it's going to open in a new page instead of within Pilot. So when I create that, if I wanted to open it in a new window, then it would take me over to this tab instead of having it show up in Pilot. Past this new button, right next to it is the Add Existing Activities. And once I go through Add Existing Activities, I'm going to stop for a second and take some questions. So under the Add Existing Activities, this is where you can put links to assignments from throughout Pilot directly into your module, which can make it a little bit easier for the students to find so they're not going through all the navigation bars at the top. If you have different discussion boards, you can post them here, Dropbox, anything that is in the Pilot page, and we'll go through each of these two, then you can actually link it in the content module. Something else that is important in here is the external learning tools. I don't know if any of you are planning on doing like a hybrid delivery, or if any of you are using WebEx or Collaborate Ultra. Something that you can do when you've got either WebEx or Collaborate Ultra, you can actually link that in your content module. So it makes it easy for the students to find. We've got Collaborate Ultra here. I typically use WebEx, so WebEx is right down here, and all you have to do is click on it, and it is right there for the students to access to be able to get into those virtual meetings. So far with content, do I have any questions?
Okay. Please, I wanted to ask if you can use the Pilot on your phone, or it's only accessible like editing and making stuff. It's only accessible using a laptop or a computer. Can you edit using a phone?
Yep, as long as it's a smartphone and you have internet access, this is all accessible through a phone. And I know that D2L has actually made a lot of effort to make it more mobile friendly too. So good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes. This is Kuldeep Rathan. Are you going to talk about Collaborate Ultra?
I am, yes. So I will tell you that's actually housed in communication, which is what I'm about to look at. And I will also have a workshop on Collaborate Ultra where you can get into it and kind of mess around with some of the functions in there. That one's also on Friday. So I can send you those details if you need them, or if you can't make it, same thing, I'll send you the recording so that you have access to that.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So, one other thing I wanted to tell you before we moved on from content. A lot of the time, you might create something, but if it's out of order, the way that you move these around is by clicking on this little grid over here, and then you can move the modules however you like. So that way, if you make a week by week setup, but you accidentally do week 13 before you do week 12, you can move those around to make sure they're in the correct order. All right, communication. Under the communication tab in Pilot, we've got discussion, groups, email, and Collaborate Ultra. So this is something that even though you can put Collaborate Ultra in your module, it is automatically housed in the communication tab. So the students do have access. One thing I recommend if you're not going to put the link in content is to maybe throw it out there on a news item or something. Hey, our first meeting is going to be in Collaborate Ultra. Here's how you access it. It just helps them a little bit, especially for new students who haven't used it. Many of our second, third, fourth year students at this point have used Collaborate Ultra. They've used WebEx. They kind of get it. But this is really good, especially for freshmen coming in. All right, so discussion boards, we'll start there. When you want to use discussion boards, this is a great way to help facilitate some engagement from the students. They can have conversations with each other. They can have conversations with you. One thing that's important to note with a discussion board is that you have to have a forum created first and then topics. So a forum is kind of like the overarching umbrella and the topics go underneath. Because if you do not have a forum before creating a topic, it will not show up for the students. They won't be able to post to it. So to create that, you're going to go to this new button, hit new forum, and I am going to name this introductions. Here, if you wanted the topic to be the exact same name, you could click on this little icon right here and select it. It'll automatically create the topic for you. It'll be named the same thing. If you don't, then we'll leave that unchecked and I'll show you how to create a customized topic. Here you can describe what's in the forum. You can say, this is where we'll introduce ourselves. This is where you say hello. And then looking at these options down at the bottom, most of the time, I don't see people checkmark allow anonymous posts. That kind of helps with being respectful with each other in the class and knowing who's posting what. The moderator must approve individual posts. So this would send you notifications when your students posted, and you could look through it and double check and make sure that it's appropriate. Usually at the collegiate level, that's not something we really need to worry about, especially when you set expectations ahead of time with your students. Users must start a thread before they can read replies. This is really good for topics that have to do with reflection of a reading assignment or some sort of answer to a question you've posed. If you don't want the students to look and see what everyone else has said so that they're just kind of copying what other students have said, this is really good because that means they actually have to go and they have to post first before they can see what anyone else has put. So that's the one that I see the most commonly. Display forum description and topics, that is up to you. That just means this is where you say hello would show up in the topic as well. So then on the restrictions page, this is where you can put the availability or the dates. So the start date, just like with that news item, the start date is when it will be visible for the students, when it'll be accessible for them to go in and post. The end date, if you put an end date, that's when it's no longer available for them. They can't post anything, it's closed down, it's locked. So usually what people will do for discussions is they will just have a start date, but then you can lock it down here so that after a certain time, they can't go in and continue to post. Because the end date will make it completely disappear. They won't even be able to see what other people posted. So those are what locking options are. One other button that you'll see all throughout Pilot is hide from users. And so something that if you are in the middle of creating, you're working on it, you don't want the students to see it populate yet, you can hide it. And I'll show you See this little icon. This is an important one because this is what's used throughout the whole page. If you ever hide anything and you see this icon with an eyeball and a slash through it, that means the students cannot see it. So that's important because there will be a lot of times we'll be like, I posted, but the students are saying that they can't see it. Look for this little eyeball icon because that's typically the culprit. So I'll go back in and make sure that it's not hidden. Put my start date for right now, and then I'm going to save and I'm going to go ahead and add a topic. And so if you look on your pilot page and you go into the discussions, feel free to go in and hit that blue new button and do a new topic. And you can make a topic about whatever you want, just to go in and kind of figure out how to fill it out, how to post it for the students to see. So I'll walk through. You have to put a title in before you can do anything else. The restrictions, it'll give a little error message like, hey, give me a name. I'm going to say hello here. I can put in a description. That's up to you. This is a good place to post instructions for the assignment. Okay, I'm going to leave all of these blank and then go over to restrictions. I'm going to put my start date today so everybody can see it. And I'm just going to leave it unlocked. People can post whenever they want throughout the semester for this one. With the topic, an extra function that we have here is the assessment. And so in a little bit, I'm going to go through the grades. Let me check on our time, 10:30, good. I'm going to go through the grade section, and assessment's really neat because from this page, you can link it to a grade item in your grade book. And so whenever you give a score for a discussion, if you choose to score them, you can put the score here. I could say this is 10 points. I'm going to go ahead and create a new grade item just so I can show you how it works. Say discussion 1. No category. Boom. So now I've got the grade item associated. I've got the score. And whenever I go to assess the posts, the scores will go immediately into the gradebook, which saves you so much time. And it's something you can do with all your assignments in Pilot, is associate them to that gradebook. So when you score them, the grades immediately go to the gradebook automatically. You don't have to go in and manually enter a score for every single student in your class, which saves a lot of time. So objectives, not many people use the objectives section, but if you want to post what your learning objectives are, you can. So I'm going to hit save and close, and I've got a topic there now. Oh, very nice. Class expectations is a good one. Yep. All right, so when it comes to discussions, does anyone have any questions right now?
I missed where the assessment or yeah, part of it is. When I was setting up my forum, I didn't see the assessment part.
Sure. So if you go into your class we'll go ahead and do the blue new button and do add or new topic. Because the assessment piece is at the topic level, it's not at the forum level. All right, so when you see this new topic page, right at the very top, it's going to have you choose a forum, so you can put it into your class expectations one. And once you put all your information in for whatever the topic may be, do you see that there's an assessment tab on this one next to restrictions? Yep. Oops, I have to choose my forum. My bad. Hello again. All right. And so what I was saying is after we get your gradebook set up, and that's a workshop I'm doing today. I won't spend quite as much time on how to set up the gradebook in this workshop, but I'll definitely send resources if you can't make it to the one this afternoon. Once you have grade items in your gradebook, you can assess them or you can associate them from here. So this drop down would give you your full list of all your grade items in the gradebook. You would put the score in the score out of box and then hit the blue save and close. So the other ones I really wanted to talk about, other than the fact that this is one place where Collaborate Ultra is located, I won't go into Collaborate Ultra today, but I did want to talk about email because there are two different ways through Pilot that you can send an email, and one is right here. If you already know the email address and you just want to type it in, you can do that from right here. And it's kind of funny because the location for the send button, usually when you go to send an email, the send button is down here. But in Pilot, the send button is above the address line. I don't know why. So once you've put in all your information, this is where you would send. Another cool function that I have a lot of instructors reach out to me about is, oh no, I sent an email in Pilot, but I can't find it. How do I find that sent email because it's not in my Outlook account? And so if you go into Pilot, communication to email, there's this gray button over here labeled sent mail. And if you click on that, it's going to show you everything you've sent from this course, which is really helpful if you need to go back and refer to something that you sent to the class or that you may have sent to a student. This is where you would find that function. If I were to hit sent mail now, it won't have anything because this is a brand new workshop, so there'd be nothing in there, but that is where you can find it. Another place where you can find email is in the class list. Elizabeth, did you have a question? Make sure you unmute. Okay,
Yes, yes. Instead of setting up a group email, we could just do the email in Pilot and it would send to just the students in the class?
we could, which is the really neat function I'm about to show you, because the communication one, you would have to manually type in your whole class, all of the emails. But what you can do from the class list is hit this email class list button. Bam, it's got everyone there. And there's this little send email down here. So once it's got the list up, you can hit send email. It's going to tell you 2 users could not be added. That's the demo student, and then also my external account that I'm using to show you guys Pilot right now. But these are all the students in the class. So right now they're located in the blind copy section. What that's going to do is when the email sends, everyone will receive it, but they won't be able to reply to everybody in the class if they're in that blind copy section. If you want to make it so that they can, then you can just move all of these up here. You can move them to the CC, you can move them to the 2 if you want it to be a chain that everyone can contribute to, but typically they automatically go into this BCC section. All right, was that, I heard another ding. Was that Elizabeth?
Yes, yes, it was me. So when you send the email, it goes to your Outlook, so that you're okay. Thank you.
Yep, it goes to all of the @wright.edu domain. Yep, so you can use Outlook. You're not going to have access to a full list of email from within Pilot. But yeah, after you put in the information, after you hit the send to class list, the send button is down here in the bottom left, and that'll send an email out to everybody. Definitely save some time. There are a lot of cool things in Pilot that save a lot of time, so. All right, since we're on class list, I want to show you the demo student. We already have one in this. You'll see your demo student always starts with ZZ. So when you go into your Pilot course for the first time and you go to the class list, if you do not have a demo student, then I would recommend hitting class list and then create demo account. And once you click create demo account, and I can do it again, we can put a second one in here. It just automatically runs that program and populates them right into your class list. So now you'll see I have 2. What's neat about the demo student account is after you set up everything in your Pilot page, if you want to see what it would look like from the student's perspective, then you click on this little arrow and you hit impersonate. You'll hit yes, I do want to impersonate this participant. And now you can see everything from the student's point of view. and what it looks like. And that goes for any of the sections that are available to the student role in Pilot, and anything that you've posted and you haven't hidden or you haven't put an end date on. This is going to show you what they can see. So definitely a very useful tool when you're first starting with Pilot and setting things up. To exit from the impersonating account, you just go up here and you click on the ZZ Demo student. Oops, I've got to move you guys. And then you hit this little X right here, and it'll take you back to your own account. Any questions about class list before I go over to assessment? Good to go? All right. I know this is a long one, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me. There's a lot in here to go through for sure. All right, under the assessment tab, so the big ones that I'm going to talk about today are Dropbox, quizzes and exams, and then class progress is a pretty cool tool. So we'll start with Dropbox. So Dropbox folders in Pilot are going to be for written assignments that you want students to turn in Pilot instead of, emailing you. So what you can do here is create a new folder. You're going to see this new experience. I would say just leave it on. This is something that's a relatively new feature in Pilot, and I'm pretty sure that they're moving to keep that the permanent only option sometime soon, but I'm not exactly sure when. So I would suggest just go ahead and leave on the new experience. If I want to create a folder, and I would suggest that after we go through this, you guys practice creating a folder for Dropbox. You can name it whatever you like. This one for me, I'm going to say favorite vegetable. Don't know why that's the first thing that popped into my head. So from the favorite vegetable folder, I'm going to say this is going to be worth 10 points, okay? When you associate it in the grades, this is where once you have grade items in your grade book, you can choose. You can choose the grade item from here. Right now, we don't have that set up, so I'm not going to mess with it, or I'd have to go in and create one. Okay, and then you can also put in a due date. So I'm going to say this is due next week. Instructions are good here. And then over on the right-hand side, this is where you're going to put in those restrictions and evaluation components. So you can put in your start date and end date. And I know I've said this a bunch of times, but this is a huge question we get from faculty. Just remember that the start date is when the students can start working on it, but the end date, it's going to make it disappear for them. They won't be able to see it at all. So usually I tell people that if you have a due date, because the due date, it'll still be visible, they can still turn stuff in, but it'll be flagged in the system as being late. I always suggest do a due date, don't mess with end date, because then they can't see it and people start freaking out, and it'll just save you the headache. So start date and due date are good, end date, probably not. You can put that in here. Special access, if you have any students with ODS that need a time extension, that's going to be in your special access. And that's also a component in a couple of other sections that I can talk to you about. We do have documentation on special access also, so I don't want to spend too much time on it right now. All right, down here when we look at the submission and completion, submission type, typically a file submission. That's the most common one. That's what allows students to upload either a Word document or a PDF into the system. Files allowed per submission. This is up to you. So unlimited just means that the student can upload more than one file. That's really helpful. If someone were to accidentally upload the wrong document, then they could say, oh, sorry about that. Let me upload the second one. This is the one that I want you to grade. If you only want to allow one file, that's fine too. Like I said, that's kind of up to your discretion. When it comes to submissions, this is where if you do have unlimited files, do you want the system to keep all of them? If a student submits 3 or 4 different documents, Do you want to keep all of them, or do you only want the most recent submission to be kept? Only one submission allowed is another option. Usually if you only have one file, you can just do the all submissions because they're only going to allow one file. All right. Evaluation and feedback. So on this, I'm not going to talk about rubrics today. There is a rubrics tool in Pilot that is very useful for grading purposes. You can put in all different kinds of rubrics. It makes the scoring process a little easier, although the work on the front end is a little heavier. We do have resources on that. If it's something you're interested in, please let me know, and I can at least send some help documentation over, because I do not think that we're going to be able to do a workshop on that this week. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save and close. And then I see that we've got one untitled. Awesome. Whenever a student goes to upload their document to Dropbox, they can just go into here, and what's going to happen from the student end is there's going to be a place where they can click Add File. So they'll see the folder, they click into the folder, and then they'll have a button that says Add File. If you I saw that there was an untitled folder in there. If you create a folder and you want to go in and make changes later, you can click into it, and there's this Edit Folder button, which will take you back to these settings that we were just going through. Something that's kind of neat with Dropbox, and this is Chris Roberts is actually going to be doing a workshop specifically for Turnitin. I don't know how many of you have heard of Turnitin, but it's a plagiarism checker that we have in here, and this is something that's really popular with the faculty to use to make sure that students are, following our academic integrity policies and making sure that they're not plagiarizing their work. Like I said, Chris Roberts will be running a workshop on Turnitin to show you how it works within Dropbox, where to turn it on, but that's something that works really well with this specific assessment tool. Are there any Dropbox questions before I go over to the quizzes and exams? Quizzes and exams, I'm just going to go through the very basic how to create a new quiz on this one. Chris Roberts will be talking about Lockdown Browser in a workshop later this week. That's a good way to ensure that your students aren't accessing other tabs in their browser while they're taking your tests. It's a way to try to help alleviate cheating. And that's something he'll go over in more detail later this week. But I just wanted to talk to you guys today about how to create a new quiz. And so even though it's labeled quizzes, everything is labeled a quiz, you can say it's an exam or a quiz, depending on what kind of assessment tool you're using. So if I were to say this is exam 1, even though it says new quiz, it's going to show up for the students as exam 1. All right, so we do not have a category. In the properties, once you give it a title, the way that you add questions is right here with this add/edit questions button. And so I don't typically mess with the import. We do have something called Respond as Test Editor, and there's a way to import questions into what's called your question library. It's a little bit finicky, and you have to have a Windows computer to use it. So a lot of the time, I recommend that if you're already planning on typing out your test through a Word document or something, to go ahead and add the questions in here as well. So we're going to say add, we're going to go to new question, and here are all different types. We've got true and false, multiple choice, multi-select, written response. The ones that I see most often are short answer, written response, multiple choice, true and false. So I'll do a multiple choice. I can say, what color is the sky? And then here's where you put your answers. And then whichever is the answer for that day, I feel like typically blue, but you never know in Ohio. You select what the correct answer is so that the system can score these automatically, which is kind of neat. So once you build your quiz and you have the answer key in here, we can set that up, and I'll show you in some of the other settings. You can set up your quiz so that it's automatically scored and sent to the grade book if there's no written response. Those do have to be graded manually. Almost everything else, though, can be graded by Pilot, which once again saves a lot of time. So something that's neat on here, we've got randomized answer order. If you want your students, when they get this test, to have the answers in all different places, you can click on that. And each student will have the same question, but just these answers will be randomized. So the first one could be green, the second could be yellow. And then how many points is it worth? I'm going to say, why not? Let's make it worth 2 points. If you want to continue to put your questions in, you can hit save and new and make a new type of question, or you can just hit save to exit out and it'll populate on that properties page. So I'm just going to save. I do want to show you, because there is a way to get to an HTML editor. So if we were to put in a written response, for the students, if you want them to be able to have access to that editor where they can change the font, they can change whether it's bold, they can use a paragraph, enable the HTML editor for their responses. This will allow them to add, if you want them to be able to add links or a picture or a video in their quiz, they can do that with this. If it's pretty simple and you just want them to type an answer in, you don't have to use that, but it is an option. If I had a lengthy question that had multiple parts and I needed to go in and add some extra zhuzh to it, if you pop out this editor, that's what's going to give you all of these options. So there are ways to add tables, there are ways to customize colors, add links, insert pictures. So anytime you have a question in a quiz and you want to customize it a little more, you click on this and you have this little pop out option, and that gives you more options to customize the question. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the settings for exam 1. If you look now in the properties section, I have 2 questions right there. And so as you add your questions from here, they will populate. You can also shuffle them all so that anytime the students get their quiz, their questions are all in different orders. And that is right there. Now the restrictions, like we've gone through already in all the other parts, right now this is hidden. Always check for that icon after we make it, but we can deselect that so everyone can see it. So remember the due date versus the start and end date. Due date is good if you want them to be able to continue to turn it in afterward. It'll just flag it as being late, and you can manually take off points for it being late. Start date is when they can access it. So it does need an availability. I usually say leave the end date alone. And then this is that display in calendar that I was telling you guys about. If you want the students to have a reminder in the calendar on their very front page of your course, hit that display in calendar and it'll show up on the widget. All right. On these restrictions, this is also where you put in, what's up, Laurel?
Hi, sorry. I just was wondering, with a quiz, it seems like maybe having an end date would be good because it's not like, you have a project that's due on this date, whereas, in which case I would want, like, even if they turn it in late, they can still get points. But with a quiz, it's like, you have a limited window of time. I don't want there to be cheating or whatever. So I feel like, I wonder if an end date, because I wonder if having it disappear would be a good thing in the case of a quiz. I mean, obviously it's personal preference, but I'm just.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And so what I would say is that the end date It depends on if you have your gradebook set up and they can access their score from there. It also depends on whether or not you want them to be able to see feedback in the quiz. Because there is a way, and when we get to submission views, that'll make a little more sense, but there's a way that students can go into their quiz and they can see what questions they got wrong if you set it up that way, depending on what you want, what information you want them to have. But if you have an end date and it disappears, then they no longer have access to that feedback. And so it could be used as a tool to go back and use that maybe to study for an upcoming exam. But you do make a good point that if you don't want them to have access to that and you've got their score in the grade book and all you want them to see is the score, end date is perfect.
So once they finish the quiz, if I don't have the end date, so it doesn't disappear, like, is it automatic that they can't go back in and adjust their answers?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Well, in which case, then that's fine. I don't care if they can see it. I just wouldn't. I guess I got confused. I wouldn't want, once they're done, they're done. Like, you can't go back in and change stuff.
Yep, and that's actually something that you put in the attempts also, which we will, I think that is in the assessment section. That's the next section. So some quizzes you can set up to have multiple attempts. Most of the time, faculty will just use one attempt. So after they submit that quiz, they can't get back in and change anything.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right, so a couple other things in the restrictions. The timing, this is where you put in how much time you want them to have. For a smaller quiz, that could maybe be 20 minutes. For a final, maybe 2 hours, maybe 1 hour. This is where you put that in. Show clock is whether or not you want the students to be able to see the timer while they're taking the test. So for some students, that might be a little anxiety inducing, but it is also helpful to keep track of how much time you have left. So that's up to you. Enforced time limit is usually what I see being used. Recommended means that they could take longer if they wanted to, and it's very, willy-nilly. Enforced is, no, this is how much time you have to take it. We always suggest leaving a 5-minute grace period. So once the 120 minutes is up, it says, all right, you've got 5 more minutes to submit this thing, or it's not getting submitted. Okay. With that grace period, you can either allow the student to continue working, or you can prevent them from making any more changes and say, all right, you're done, 5 minutes to hit the submit button. That means they can't go back, they can't change anything. And then this one is allow the student to continue working, but if they go past that grace period, they're getting a 0 on the whole thing, which personally I think is a little harsh. Typically, we see the prevent the student from making further changes so that it forces them to go ahead and hit that submit button. And then the special access is what I was talking about a little bit with Dropbox. If you have a student who can't make it during that examination time and they need to take it another time, they work with you, this is where you would say allow selected users special access. So I would add users to that access, and this is where you can put in all of the specifics of what it is they need. So maybe their start date would be different, or maybe you have an ODS student that might need a little more time than the other students. That one, you can change the time. You can say, all right, instead I'll give you 200 minutes to take this exam. You can also do an alternative grace period if you need to give them more time, depending on, occasionally we do see ODS students that have very specific requirements for their exams, and this is where you would go in to put those special access specifics. And then I would select which user. I'm going to give Chris Roberts special access. And then you'll see down here that it has all of the details listed right under. So you can go back and double check without having to go all the way into the special access function. It's all right there. And that is only visible to faculty. All right, so assessment is kind of where we get into those attempts. When you have your gradebook set up, this is another thing I was mentioning earlier that makes your life so much easier. you can have the attempt be immediately graded if there are no written response, even if there are, as long as your students know that the score isn't going to be completely right immediately until you go in and finish scoring it. But if there are no written response, this is great because at the end of the quiz, you can set it up so the students know exactly what they got right away. And that's what that automatic grade is right there. You can link this to a grade item. If we were to have the gradebook set up, you could link this to a grade item as well. And this auto export to grades, if you click on that, it immediately sends it to the gradebook. So you don't have to go into the gradebook and put in scores for every single student. They'll do it all for you right from this page. All right, and this is kind of what Laurel was talking about with attempts. I don't want them to be able to go back in and change anything. I don't want them to cheat. This is where you can change the attempts. If you want them for like a practice test, unlimited is really good. They can go in a couple times for a practice test, but when it's the real deal, most of the time you'll see that they have one attempt. That's it. And we keep the grade calculation the same. If you were to have more than one attempt, if they could take it twice, you can set it to keep the highest score or even the average of all. All right. So I went over properties, how to add the new questions, some of the restrictions in the assessment tools. The last one I do want to go over for quizzes and exams. We're at 11:03. Okay, we still got time. Is submission views. So this is what I was talking about. If you want your students to have some access to feedback after they've taken the quiz, this is where you go in and change the submission view. After they submit their exam, right now it's set so they do not get to see the questions. They don't see any sort of stats for the whole class because that's another option. You can show how everyone did on average without names, just how everyone did on average. But it will immediately show how they scored. So they'll just see how many points they got as soon as they turn it in. If you want to change that, then you click on default view.
Again, I don't know how you got there.
Oh, that's okay. Did you click on exam 1?
I did.
And then you'll see right under exam 1, there are different tabs. It should say properties, restrictions. Do you see those?
Okay, so property restriction, yes.
And so I'm in submission views.
Submission view, okay, got it.
Perfect. And then to change the submission views, I clicked the default view. It's the blue one that's a link. And I clicked on that.
Okay, got it, got it.
All right. So this message is what the students see as soon as they click that submit button. It just tells them it's been submitted successfully. You can change that if you want to customize it and be like, good job, everybody, you did it. The view details, this is what they're going to be able to see after they've submitted. So do you want them to see questions? Again, if you want them to see what they got wrong. If that's the case, you would hit yes. Showing questions answered incorrectly, that means those are the only ones they'll see. So if there were 10 questions and they got 2 wrong, they're only going to see those 2 that they got wrong. Show the questions they answered correctly, same thing. If they got 8 of them correct, those are the only questions they're going to see, but they're not going to see what they missed. If you want to show all the questions, but not have them see what they answered, that's what this third option is. The most common, if you're going to show the questions, is show all of them with user responses. You don't have to give them the answers if you don't want to. If you did want them to see what the correct answer was, you would click this box right here. Otherwise, it just shows them whether or not they got it correct by showing the score. If it was a 2-point question and they got it wrong, it would show as 0 out of 2. If they got it right, it would show as 2 out of 2. If you don't want them to see that, then you just keep it as no. Okay. The statistics down here is if you did want the students to see how they performed in relation to the rest of the class. It doesn't show the students' names or IDs or anything. It literally just has the scores on a graph. And so if that's something that you would like them to have access to, it'll show up at the end of their quiz, and you can show the class average, and you can also show the score distribution. I don't typically see this being used for quizzes and exams. It's a neat function, but it's not super common. The only other thing on submission views is showing the attempt score and the overall attempt score, which is just, okay, cool, you got an 8 out of 10. So that typically we keep that check marked so they can see what their score is. Are there any questions about the different submission views for students' quizzes and exams? And the quizzes and exams function in general, it's a little hefty. So that one, absolutely. If you guys ever have any questions once you're getting this stuff set up, please let me know, because we don't have as much time today to go into like the question library, which is a place where you can store questions as you're creating them. You're able to create different question pools and sections. So this is a really neat function. And if you have more questions over it or would like to schedule any sort of training once you're setting up your pilot page, feel free to email me. And we can get that on the schedule, because it is a really neat tool, but it is also very kind of complicated to pick up at first. So the last thing in assessment that I want to go over, we've got about 20 minutes left here. Last thing I wanted to go over was class progress. This is just really cool to see what your students have been doing on the page. And so it's not something that is necessary, but if you're ever curious on, I wonder if so-and-so has logged into the class, this is a great spot to go and look. You can see how much content out of your content modules that they've actually completed. You can see how many times they've logged into the course, and it also shows their grade, over here on the right. For specific students, if you want to get more information, you can actually click on their name in your pilot pages, and it gives a full progress summary. So this is a really neat tool. Like I said, not necessary, but something kind of fun to mess around with if you're curious to see how some of your students are getting along in the course. So let's talk grades and course admin are my last two, and these are going to be relatively quick because I've got a workshop that is solely focused on grades, and it's only about 45 minutes long. So that one's today at 1:15. I'll go through the entire setup process and how you link it to all those different assignments. If you can't make it, register anyway, so I can send you the recording and you can see how to set up your gradebook in Pilot if that's something you're interested in doing. It does save a lot of time, in my opinion. So once you go into this grades tab on the Pilot homepage, the very first thing you want to do in your brand new pilot course is go to the setup wizard. And this setup wizard is what it gives you all of these options step by step on how to customize your grading system. And so once you go to the setup wizard, you will literally click start and you'll just go through and choose everything. It walks you right through it. And so I'm not going to do that right now, but I will go over it in much more detail in that grades workshop. When it comes to this grade section also, you'll see that we already have a couple of items created from when we did the discussions and when we did Dropbox. Those are associated. The only thing I really wanted to hit on in this workshop was this new button. And so there are two different options when you're setting up your gradebook. It's an item and a category. Category would be kind of like that umbrella. Kind of in the discussions we talked about, you have to have a forum to have a topic. In the gradebook, you don't have to have a category to have a grade item, but it's helpful because it organizes it and it makes it easier for the students, and it also makes it easier for you to find what you need to find. So this could be exams. And then I'll just save and close that. And you'll see that categories are all in blue and items are all in white. If I were to click on this, I could put it into the category and you'll see how it shows up underneath, and it's tabbed over a little bit. So when you go to organize your grade book, it's really nice to have those categories because it just makes everything so much easier to find. It almost looks like a nice outline. Okay, last thing before we go, something that is one of the most important parts of Pilot is the course admin section where you can activate your course, because one of the most common questions we get at the beginning of every semester is, why are my students saying they can't see my course? I did everything, I set it all up, and they're saying that they can't find it. It's probably not active. So the way that you activate your course once you've got it all set up is this course admin tab and then course offering information. So course admin tab and then course offering information. From here, you see the name, you'll see the semester, all of the info that you need. The important thing is this little button right here next to courses active. If it is deselected, the students do not see it. So you want to make sure this has a check mark next to it for the students to be able to access. The other important thing to note is this also has a start date. The start date for all of your fall courses will automatically generate as August 23rd because that's the first day of the semester. But a lot of the time, faculty might want the students to have access a little bit earlier so they can look at the syllabus, right? If you don't want to email that out. So if you want to change your start date, you can do that right here. This one I have set for today because we used it today. Typically on your page, it will be 8/23/2021 for fall. Once you've hit the button next to active, if you change your start date, you can. Go ahead and hit that blue save button so that it's active and the students can get in. All right, that was a lot of information. In about an hour and 15 minutes. And so I wanted to leave the floor open for any questions you may have had, any concerns, opening up the floor to you guys.
So Courtney, if we have any question, and should we send you an email or set up an appointment? How do we do it?
Yeah, so if you have any questions, we've got a couple ways that you can get a hold of us. So me and some of the people on my team who also work closely with Pilot. One way that you can do that is by emailing me directly, and that's just my Cortney.Ley@wright.edu, and I can put that in the chat too, because my name is spelled a little weird. So that's one way. If you do email me, what I typically do is turn it into a ServiceNow ticket. And so I don't know if any of you have used ServiceNow other than to register for the workshop. That's our ticketing system. And so we can email back and forth from within that ticketing system. Another option is calling the help desk. So I'll put that phone number in here for you too in the chat. The help desk will be able to field your call and send that on to me for me to be able to get back to you. So a lot of the time I work with emails, but I'm also happy to schedule times to talk on the phone and also to schedule times where we can have a WebEx like this. WebEx is actually one of my favorites. I like being able to share the screen. So yeah, email or calling the help desk. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good question. All right, any other questions for me? I hope this wasn't too overwhelming. Like I said, I know it's a lot of information and it's sometimes difficult to learn a new management system, so. All right. Well, if you guys think of anything while you're setting up your pilot pages, just like I was saying, feel free to email me or call the help desk and we will get you all squared away. But otherwise, if I don't see you in any other workshops, I hope you guys have a great start to your semester. So exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This was very
Appreciate
helpful.
it.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and I will end the meeting.